Are you interested in an aviation career or want to fly for fun? This video is for you. We're going to break down step by step how to get your license and how to become a pilot. And one of the most common reasons why people fail to get their pilot license, they don't understand the cost involved. That's why at the end of this video, I'm going to explain exactly how much it costs to become a pilot. Step 1, get your medical certificate. Another common mistake is starting flight training without knowing if you're medically fit to fly. If you can't get a medical certificate, you cannot fly. That's why it is crucial that you understand exactly how to get one. Getting a medical certificate consists of a physical exam by a doctor who specializes in aviation. They're called an Aviation Medical Examiner, or AME. Before you go for this physical exam, you need to consider a few things. First, you need to choose which class of medical certificate you want. First, second, or third. A third class medical is the easiest to get. That's the one that you need if you don't plan to fly as a career. If you want to get paid to fly, you will need at least a second class medical certificate. And if you plan to become an airline pilot, you will need a first class medical. I recommend that you get one of those prior to starting flight training to prevent any surprises down the line. Most people pass the medical exam without an issue, but some medical conditions can prevent you from becoming a pilot. One of the most common concerns is color vision deficiency. Now, colorblind pilots can still fly, but they're usually restricted to flying recreationally and only during the day. So if you want to make a career out of flying, you will need to pass a color vision test. If you're concerned about color blindness or other health conditions, we've linked additional information in the description below. Your AME also can address some of the concerns you may have. We've also added a link down here to help you find an AME near you. Okay, so you meet the medical requirements. What's next? Well, you need to choose a flight school. This is one of the most important decisions you will make in your flying career. If you make the wrong choice, it could end your dream entirely. Here's what you need to know about selecting a flight school. The first thing to consider is whether to go for a Part 61 or Part 141 flight school. Basically, there are two types of flight schools and different rules apply to them. In general, Part 61 schools offer more flexible training programs. On the other hand, Part 141 schools are more rigid and structured. You can get your license faster at a Part 141 flight school, but they are more expensive. To learn more, check out this video right here where I explain the difference in detail. Another consideration is the distance between your home and the flight school. Now keep in mind that your commute could add a significant amount of time to your training, so plan accordingly. Next, consider the type of airplane that the flight school operates. The most important thing, make sure that the airplanes are in good condition and well maintained. Newer aircraft are an advantage, especially if they have glass cockpits, but you don't need to fly the latest and greatest to get your license. There's definitely a premium to newer aircraft. Step 3. After you choose a flight school, you'll need to choose an instructor. A lot of students don't even think about choosing a flight instructor. This is a big mistake. The wrong instructor can make or break your flight training experience. Here's how to make the right choice. First, make a list of the flight schools near you. Visit a few of them and then speak with the instructors. Are they professional, enthusiastic, welcoming? That's a great sign. A happy instructor is a good instructor. Or do the instructors look like they haven't slept in days and maybe wear a permanent frown? Well, you might want to look elsewhere in this case. Now consider doing an intro flight at several flight schools. This is the first flight you will have before officially beginning your training. It usually consists of a scenic route with an instructor, and it's a great way to get a good sense of how a flight school operates. It's also a good idea to take multiple intro flights with several instructors at different flight schools before you make a choice. Also, don't hesitate to request different instructors early on if you feel like they're not a good fit. Once you've chosen your flight school and instructor, it's time to start flight training. Now, this can be a little bit scary, especially if you don't know what to expect. Now, let's talk about the structure of a typical flight lesson. First, your instructor will give you an overview of the lesson. It's very important that you prepare for lessons ahead of time. Then, you'll both head out to the airplane. What you do during the flight depends on the lesson, but there is a general structure. Your instructor will typically demonstrate a procedure or a maneuver, then you will try to do it on your own. Now, you'll continue doing that until they are happy with your performance. Now, expect a post-flight briefing at the end of the lesson. You and your instructor will discuss your performance, what you did well, and also what needs improvement. This is also a good time to learn about your next flight. Now, with each flight and ground lesson, you get closer to earning your private pilot certificate. the one that will allow you to fly with passengers without getting paid. When your instructor is confident in your abilities, they'll endorse you for your first solo, which is exactly what it sounds like. You will be flying the airplane on your own for the first time. Very exciting. After you start flying solo, it's time to think about taking your knowledge test. Now, this is the first official test that you will need to take. So what does the test consist of? Well, the private pilot knowledge test has 60 multiple choice questions. You will have 2 hours to complete it, and you need to score 70% or higher. So here's what you should do to pass with flying colors. The key is preparation. Don't expect to read just a few books and then go pass the test. Now, luckily, that's where we can help. Our Private Pilot Made Easy online ground school is designed to help you pass the exam. We're so confident that we'll even send you $175 and a full refund if you don't pass on the first try. Now, click on the link in the description to learn more. You're almost there. After you've passed your knowledge test, the only thing left is an in-person test with a designated pilot examiner, or DPE. DPE is an experienced examiner approved by the FAA. Their job is to make sure that you are qualified, proficient, and a safe pilot. This in-person test is also known as a practical test, or more commonly, a check ride. The check ride has an oral and a flight portion. The oral exam happens on the ground and consists of a conversation between you and the DPE. They're going to evaluate your aviation knowledge, your flight planning, and the decision-making skills. It can range anywhere between an hour and a half to 3 hours. Now, when your DPE is happy with your knowledge, it's time to hop in the aircraft. During the flight portion, you will demonstrate various skills, maneuvers, and that usually takes about an hour. The DPE wants to see you operate the aircraft safely and with precision. It will also test your decision-making abilities in the aircraft. If the DPE is happy with your skills, you will become the country's newest pilot. Congratulations. This is the first step on the way to becoming an airline pilot. So how long does it take to get your private pilot certificate? Well, if you're training full-time, it can be around 3 to 6 months. You'll need a minimum of 40 hours of flight time, but the average person takes about 70 to 80 hours. It really depends on the weather, the type of airspace that you learn in, how consistently you fly, and in many other factors. Okay, so you're a pilot, but you can't get paid to fly. Just yet. Before you get your commercial pilot certificate, you need to obtain flying experience and an instrument rating. Here's how. An instrument rating allows you to fly an aircraft in limited visibility, using only the instruments in the cockpit. Similar to the private pilot process, you'll need to pass a written and a practical test. Good news, if your current flight instructor can provide instrument training, you can continue to fly with them. The experience is pretty much the same as your private pilot training, just more complex concepts. After you get your instrument rating, you're almost there. The bad news, well, now you need to get a commercial pilot certificate. The good news, the process is very similar to your private pilot certificate. There's a knowledge test and a check ride that follows the same format we just discussed. The biggest difference is the level of difficulty. The commercial knowledge test covers much more than the private pilot test, and the check ride is way more strict. But what makes the commercial certificate especially difficult is how much experience you need. For starters, you'll need at least 250 hours of flight time. Now, out of Part 141 flight school, you only need 190 hours, but it still takes a significant amount of time and money to achieve. Once you pass the commercial check ride, you can finally get paid to fly. If you train full-time, you can expect to obtain your commercial certificate in about 6 to 18 months. Keep in mind that this can vary depending on the weather and the flight school. Now, it's time to go straight to the airlines, right? Well, not exactly. Before you fly the big jets, you need more hours under your belt. That's why many commercial pilots become flight instructors. It's a fantastic way to quickly gain experience. At this point, you should also get your multi-engine rating. This allows you to fly aircraft with more than one engine. But ultimately, you need an airline transport pilot certificate in order to fly for an airline, and that requires 1,500 hours of flight time. Now, many inspiring airline pilots gain those hours by instructing. Some pilots also find other commercial flying jobs that don't require an ATP. Many do a bit of both. Once you've earned that ATP certificate, your dream is finally within reach, and now you can start to apply for airline jobs. It can take anywhere from 2 to 5 years in order to obtain that ATP certificate, depending on the type of flying that you do. Now, you may say, what is this going to cost? Well, a medical certificate can cost anywhere between $75 to $200 depending on the type of certificate and also the doctor. Your private pilot certificate will average $15,000 to $20,000. This also varies significantly depending on the flight school, type of aircraft, the instructor, or even the location. The commercial pilot certificate is the most expensive. Expect around $55,000. This can even go into six figures depending on the flight school. You should also consider the cost of obtaining your flight instructor certificate. Now, this is not a requirement, but it's one of the best ways to gain experience before you go to the airlines. A flight instructor rating will cost around $5,000. The good news is that once you are employed as a flight instructor, well, you can start to get paid to fly. Your flight school might even pay for additional upgrades to your instructor rating. And finally, your ATP certificate. Some airlines might pay for your ATP, but if you have to pay for it yourself, it will cost around $5,000. Now, I know, you're probably a little intimidated at this stage by all of this information. But guess what? Hundreds of thousands of people just like you have become pilots. We even had an interview with one of our students who completed his private pilot certificate in 40 hours. That's the least amount of time possible. So if you want to get some inspiration and learn a few valuable tips, check out this interview right here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.